Well, it is 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you all so much for starting your Saturday off bright and early with the Geology Talk. My name is Kayla Clark, and I coordinate public programs for UGA Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant. So as an organization, we contribute to healthy coastal ecosystems and communities through research, extension, and education. And Erica has been working with us this summer to talk about some of the work that she does in marine geology and all kinds of geology. So we're really excited for it, but a couple of just quick Zoom logistics. You will notice that your video and your audio are turned off, and it is going to remain off for the duration of the program. However, we still really want to hear from you. So we might add some polls, we might ask some questions in the chat, and you can find the chat by going to the toolbar at the bottom or the top of your device, and you'll see the word chat, and you can type in there. So it looks like we've already got several people that have joined us, some folks all the way from Kentucky, which is wonderful. Fantastic. So you can ask questions at any time, and then I will ask those of Erica when we have a good question and answer time. We are also recording, and about a week after the event, you can find the recording on our YouTube page. And if you have any questions, the best place to ask those is in the Q&A box. So in that same toolbar where you found the chat, you can find the Q&A. It'll say those letters, and there'll be two little word bubbles. If you're on a smaller device like a phone, you might need to hit the word more, or there'll be three little dots, and if you click on there, you'll see the drop down for both the chat and the Q&A. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Erica.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really glad you guys are all here. I think we're going to have a really good time today. So before delaying any further, let's just get right into it. So a little bit about me. I am a College of Charleston student in Charleston, South Carolina. I am currently getting my Bachelor's of Arts in Geology and Environmental Geosciences. So I would consider myself very much a student at this time, but I would also consider myself a geologist because I have done my own personal research in both hydro and marine geology. I've done those through grants that I've gotten from the IRCA section of College of Charleston, undergraduate research and creative associations. So I've been very fortunate to have those experiences, as well as group research studies that I've been able to do through professors with adjunct facilities at both UGA and the College of Charleston. I'm an educator, so something that's really important about geology is that if I know a ton about geology, it doesn't really mean a lot for the earth. But if you guys can all know a ton about geology and we can all work to make our environment better, I think that is something that is going to have a much more profound impact, especially in environmental sciences. But most importantly, of all the things that I am a cat mom to my black cat Taxi, who may or may not make an appearance depending on how active he is this morning. Okay. So what you guys can expect from today is we're going to go over the definition of geology. We're going to go into the stuff that I've studied, most specifically in hydrogeology and marine geology. We're going to go over some geotechnology so you guys can learn about the equipment that we use to extract data. We're going to talk about what a geologist does in general and also in field day. We're going to have a lot of polls and questions for you guys to interact. A super cool experiment that we're going to show you guys how to do. You can do at home, and then tons and tons of questions or chances for you guys to ask questions like Kayla has already said. So before we go into anything else, I would like to know how many of you guys have heard of geology. So Kayla is going to throw up a poll for you guys to answer. You guys are going to have about 30 seconds to answer. Looks like we have some people already answering. 7 of you guys have heard of geology. That's great. So about 10 more seconds for you guys to get your answers in. And then we will share those results. All right, so all of you guys answering today have heard of geology, which is great. So I'm going to ask you guys what geology is, since you guys all know a little bit something about it. Just go ahead and put in the chat if you have an idea of what a definition might be. Maybe something you know about geology that you'd like to share. Give you guys some time to put those questions or answers in.
While folks are entering their answers, I also want to say welcome to the number of folks that have joined from Georgia, and let us know that in the chat box. No responses yet. Oh, here we go. Sometimes it just takes a little while to type. So we've got actually several people have said the study of the earth.
Nice. Study of the environment.
And then someone else added to that study of environment and the layers of earth.
Awesome. Okay, you guys can keep putting your answers in, but we're going to go ahead and move on. So yes, you guys are all super smart already. So maybe by the end of this, you guys will be teaching me something. You are absolutely correct. Geology is the study of the earth and its processes. So geology covers everything that we have going on here on our lovely water planet that we live on. There's a lot of different categories of geology that you can study that I have studied just in classes and in research that I've gotten to do on both micro and macro levels. So what I'm going to focus on today is mostly hydrogeology, marine geology, but there are also a bunch of other really, really cool geology sections that you can study. In most recent years, planetary geology has become a really important thing for us to study because what we know about the Earth can be applied to other planetary bodies to be able to look at what life would be like on those planets for organisms if there were ever to be life on other planets besides ours. Paleobiology is something that I'm sure a lot of you guys know about. Everyone is a dinosaur fan. And that is actually, even though it's a biology, under the category of geology, which is really cool. So there's a bunch of other ones listed up here: seismology, volcanology, environmental geology. The list goes on and on. So a lot of really cool things to study with geology that we can answer questions about at the end if you have questions about. But today we're going to focus on what I know to the best of my ability, which is hydrogeology. So we're going to park on this first. Hydrogeology is the study of water and how it impacts the earth, both negatively and positively. So the picture in the far left corner is some technology that we're using in a lab to check sea levels in Charleston, South Carolina, where I go to school. So we can test those levels to see how sea level has changed, how flooding is going to affect a city, which is something that really impacts our coastal environments for those of you who are in Georgia or South Carolina or Florida. In the middle picture on the bottom, that was a geochemistry course that I was able to do lab work with afterwards, where we were actually testing the sanitation of local water bodies that would flow in and out of the city to stream channels in the ocean. So that's important to know how we are negatively impacting the waters. And then on the far right, me making a nice pouty face, is me doing my own personal research in hydrogeology. So something that we do in hydrogeology is we spend a lot of time in the field, but we also do a lot of lab work. So this is a course that I took where we were out in the field looking at wells and how wells are established. And some of the seniors doing their thesis projects were building wells and looking at our waterways. And something that we have to do when we are digging a new well is to test what the sediment is like. So sediment is a super fancy word that I'm going to use like a ton today. That basically just means dirt, earth, the ground. And so sediment can vary in terms of grain size. So when something is a ground that is very gravelly, has big rocks, it's very hard to put something down into it to get deep into the layers. So when we're testing what a well is going to look like, we oftentimes take a little sample of soil, a little sample of dirt from beneath our feet, and we lick it to test what the grain feels like on our tongue. So next time you're at the beach and you get some sand in your mouth or something like that, and you would normally think that was a little bit of a rough day, you're just being a geologist. So good for you guys. So hydrogeologists in action. So when I head out into the field or other hydrogeologists head out into the field, there's a lot of work that goes into getting to that point. So before you can do absolutely anything with going out into the field, which is a super fancy way of saying just going outside. So instead of reading about the geology in our textbooks, just walking outside and doing it. So before you can go out in the field, you got to do a lot of research. So because hydrogeology is about water, sometimes you would think that might be easy to find, but most of the time we are looking at water that was once there. The record of water where a river once was and it dried up. So we use a really cool technology called ArcGIS, and these are some pictures of the images from my personal research and the different stages of the process of me getting out into the field. So you have to go in by hand and make these maps, outlining these features to see where these water systems were. You also have to go in and look at the actual land from a bird's eye view as it is today. So this is what it looked like a long, long time ago up here in the far right corner. But down here is what it actually looks like right now. And we have to make sure that we're not just going to be walking around doing geology in someone's backyard or someone's golf course. So you got to make a lot of phone calls and make a plan for when you're going out into the field. So all that stuff is a lot of tedious work that pays off because then you get to go out into the field. So now I'm going to walk you guys through a field day, which is the best thing. It's the best part of being a geologist and what makes it really interesting. So you have to wake up really, really early, pack your bags, have a really nice huge breakfast because you're going to be out away from the road. So as you can see in the far left corner, this was just a picture from the maps when the GPS signal went off and we were on to what we had brought with us from our ArcGIS maps. So we have a truck that's loaded up with these things that we use for coring, which are giant metal tubes that we're going to stick into the ground to be able to see what's down there. We got to pack a lot of food, a lot of sunscreen, because you're going to be out there all day. So we leave around 6 o'clock in the morning. My site was about 3 hours away from where I was living in Charleston. So we headed out into the field. And the first thing that we're going to do is kind of get a bearing for where we are. So I think I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys a quick question just before I go into talking about some of these technologies to see if you have an understanding of the very basic thing that we're using for this. So we're going to throw up a poll. Kayla's going to throw up a poll for us. And I just want to know how many of you guys are familiar with sonar? Give you guys about 30 seconds to answer that. All right, you guys have about 15 more seconds. Oh, sorry. Okay, cool. Now you guys can see it. Awesome. So that was everybody. You guys answered really speedy, quick. So some of you guys haven't, and some of you guys have. That's awesome. Okay. So for those of you guys who have not heard of sonar technology, if you're familiar with the way that bats are able to see by not using their ears, or other marine mammals, maybe, not other, also marine mammals, like whales and dolphins, that send out a signal that bounces off something and sends that signal back to it. So they're able to kind of have this sight where we normally wouldn't have. So we have to use this technology of sonar to be able to look under the ground for where those water systems are. So this really fancy looking shopping cart down here is a type of technology that we are able to send out a ping, is what we call a sonar sound that we send out. So that ping goes down, and we use this system here to be able to change how deep that goes based on how far under the ground we think that our interesting find is going to be. So for me, I was looking at alluvial fans, which are water systems that are dispersed by all sorts of river systems coming together and dumping all the sediment and water in an area. So in order to kind of find where that was on the map, we used this pole that I had a picture of me holding earlier to find our GPS signal point by point. So you take a signal, walk a couple steps, take a signal again. And then once we have our kind of map true to what we've been looking at online for many months, we can take this little cart here and send out pings along the lines for where the alluvial fan is going to be to see where this water body was once deposited, which is pretty cool. So after that, we are very much going to do X marks the spot. So once we find where we think would be a good spot to see what's going on under the ground, where we think it's going to be right where we've been looking at on these maps, we take a shovel, and we mark X marks the spot, and then we put a core into the ground. So this really, really cool, massive metal pole right here is a core. We are able to use this mechanism here at the top to send a vibration down the whole thing so that we're able to push it into the ground. Because if we were to take a shovel or some sort of digging mechanism that we have in modern technology, even the biggest thing that we could find, it would disturb the way the soil was deposited in a nice clean little layer. But if we can go straight down and kind of look around us to see what's going on, then that's going to be exactly how it was deposited in layers and layers over time. So with vibrating it down there, it's able to go through some really hard materials without disturbing it. Which is really, really important for our geological record. So you're gonna go out in the field and you're gonna take probably 2 or 3 cores. Each core takes a couple hours depending on how thick the sediment is. As you can see from the top, where this is a coastal environment still, so we have a lot of sands, but we also have some gravel deep down there and some tightly packed clays and other things that are a little bit difficult to go through. This is also a very dry climate, very hot climate, so it takes a long time to do this. So you're going to be coring until you get down to the very, very bottom of where that little mechanism meets there. You're going to pour some water in it to create a seal, cap it, and manually pull it out. So it's really important that you have friends and field hands to help you get through that. So you finished your field day, you got 3 or 4 cores, you sent out pings, and you found your map in real time, and you're good to go. So then you get home and you're exhausted, and you have a little friend that came home with you. You got a little gecko that snuck in with your cores from your coastal environment. You take them back to the lab, and then you have pretty much no time at all until you are ready to pass out because you've been outside all day. So you get some aloe, you take a shower, help with your sunburn, and then you make something to eat. So I included this picture because I think it's really funny. This is something I do after every field day. I ate something absolutely ridiculous. So I made mac and cheese. I had sweet potatoes, a muffin, and some Oreos. So that's basically what you do as a geologist. You're tired, you're ready to go, and you had a hard day. So that was my meal from my first field day of my personal research. And then this right here in the top is the gold mine, what you went out there to get. So this is our core. We take a saw, and we slice it down the middle and open it up and look through it with this little notebook down here that shows what soil colors mean different things about that environment. So what's really cool is that you guys can do your own core at home. So the only materials you're going to need for that is going to be a straw. That can be any type of straw, it just needs to be clear. So you can use a plastic one, if you have a clear reusable one, or maybe a glass one, or yeah, you can just reuse a plastic one that you only used one time, and you can recycle it by making core out of it. You just need some access to some earth and water if your soil is not very wet. It is very snowy right now where I live, so I had lots of water samples. So we actually have a video that Kayla is going to show us of a core that I got to do. So this is going to be just a video really quick that Kayla's going to pull up for us of me taking a core. So whenever you're ready, Kayla, you can go ahead and play that. Awesome. So I'm just taking a plastic straw out of its wrapper and going down to the earth and clearing a little pathway for myself. There's some plastic, always nice to pick up some plastic if you see it that someone left behind. You're going to clear a little spot for you because you might have something in the way. You're going to test the soil type to see if it's nice and wet. Mine was very, very wet and sticky clay. So you're just going to go ahead and stick that straw right into the ground. Make sure it's as perpendicular to the ground as possible so you can get it right down instead of to the side. Something weird, and then you're going to wiggle it to make a little air pocket and push it down as far as you can. Once you're done, you're going to make a little cap on the top and pull it out. Awesome, and there's your little miniature version of a core. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share another video that we took. A second video of me doing a second core. So I did a couple different cores, and this is the second go. So you can do this as many times as you'd like with as many different straws as you have. So this is just a different area of the park that I was in and a different type of straw. So this is going to be a little bit of a thicker straw and a little bit wider. So this time I'm not going to clear a spot to put it in. I'm just going to go ahead and put it right down in there because on a like a macro level, you'd see all these different layers, but on this little version of the straw, on the micro level, I wanted to have you guys be able to see like the snow and some leaves. But unfortunately, what happens in real life happened here where there's an obstruction in the way. If you're coring near a tree, maybe you could run into some roots, and I just couldn't get it down in there at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop that and clear a little pathway, which is why it's important that you guys do that first. And make sure that it's good to go in there. So we have a little path now. I start to twist it again, make that air pocket when you move it side to side, and then push as much as you can, get it as far down in there as you can. Once you start to pull it, or excuse me, push it, and the straw's bending a little bit, you don't want to break the straw, so that's probably as deep as you can go. So you're going to put your thumb on there again and cap it and pull it out, and you have another core. So like I said, if your earth is really cold like mine, it might only get like an inch in there. Also, if it's really dry, you're going to need to add some water. So I'm just going to go ahead and cap mine here and pull it out and show you guys this core that I got. So awesome. So I'm going to pop back on over to our slideshow. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and look at the cores that I took. So these are just, I took a couple of them, tried out different areas and different options, and I found some pretty cool things in these, even on these tiny little versions of them. So I'm curious with you guys with your geology lenses on, if you can see anything that you might think a geologist would find interesting to find in a core record? Is there anything in any of these images that you find to be interesting? I want you guys to put in the chat things that you are seeing. So you might want to look at things like color, other materials besides sediment that you might see. Awesome. Someone said roots. Very good. Yeah. A lot of different colors that we have there. Yeah. Awesome. And someone said grass. Yeah. Yep. Grass. Another person is talking about the colors again. Yep. Awesome. So you guys can keep sending those in, and we can mention them either now or at the end whenever you send them in. But yeah, all of these things are really, really good observations. You guys did a great job. So the color of the soil tells a lot about the environment that lived there, tells a lot about how much oxygen there is, and then having things like roots and how many, someone said something about how many there are and how many things there are in there. That can show a lot about when we get down to like a fossil record, something really way deep down there, and we see a ton of roots. That shows you something about that environment. So what I found super interesting about these cores that I think you guys all nailed really well is, so right here we have like a little, on the far left corner at the very top, we have a little tiny flower there. Down here we have a leaf. This is a root. This one has some melted snow, so it has a water column at the top. And this one even has some stratification of colors right within this teeny tiny inch. So it goes from light to dark to light soil again, which says a lot about this environment. So you guys did a great job, and I think you guys will find some really cool things in your various environments as well. So something that might be different where you live, if you are on the coast right now, you might have sand, you might have pieces of shells, and all kinds of different things. So there's a lot of different varieties for where you might be. That's just an example from where I am right now, where it's very snowy and cold. And then you guys might be where it's very warm and sunny. So there's a lot of different varieties, which is really, really cool. So we are going to continue on now. So that was hydrogeology. You guys all made it through a field day. You did great, and you even dissected your course. So now we're going to move on to marine geology. Marine geology is the study of coastal processes and offshore seafloor topography. Oh my goodness, that is a mouthful. That basically just means looking at what the coast looks like, where the beaches are, and way out beyond the coast, what the seafloor looks like and how that ocean floor was before it maybe was an ocean. So some pictures that I have thrown up for you guys are some lab experiences that I've had of looking at the different rocks that might be existing offshore, what the floor is made of way out in the middle of the ocean, and then also what we might be able to find in a coastal environment. So the pictures on the far left are us just going out for the day in local Charleston on a boat. So that is able to see something that's happening coastally, something very, very close by and prevalent. And then offshore is another field experience that I've had on the research vessel Savannah through the Skidaway Institute of Oceanography. So this cruise that I was able to do was living on a boat for about 5 days and doing offshore geology research using this beautiful research vessel where we were able to do a lot of the things that I did in hydrogeology on the land, but just offshore, deep into the water. So I'm curious, before I get going, about a day in the life of a marine geologist. How many of you guys have stayed in a boat overnight? So Kayla's going to throw up that poll for us. And I'm just curious to see how many of you guys have had experiences like this. Awesome. Okay, some of you guys are saying yes, some of you guys are raising your hand. This is great. Okay, so most of you guys have not, and some of you guys have. So very, very cool. So staying in a boat overnight is a very fun experience that I think everyone should have. This is what it looks like to stay in a research vessel. We have these berks where this is mine up here, and there's someone below you and someone on the other side, and you have these little curtains that separate you guys. And it's kind of like staying on like maybe like a train, but you're in the middle of the ocean. And what's really fun about staying on a boat for research is that you're not going anywhere. The whole point is that you're going out to the ocean to go there and make lines back and forth and get data, and just go back and forth in lines, which is kind of cool, I think. So this is the data that we get from being on a boat. So you wake up in the morning and you might have an early morning shift, you might have a night shift, and there's somebody cooking for you all day. So it's very different from a hydrogeology experience. You have someone taking care of you, basically making all your meals for you, and you're working really weird hours. I had some shifts that were like 2 a.m. to 10 p.m. I had some ones that started at 5 a.m. I had some ones that started at midnight. So you just work these crazy shifts, and there's someone at all times out in the cabins, basically, watching these screens of this data that we're getting. So that ping, that sonar technology that I talked to you guys about with that little rover thing that I was pushing, that on a macro scale is this entire boat. This entire boat has this system. It's called multi-beam sonar. And it sends out all these beams of pings that are going out to the seafloor to see how deep it is. So instead of going through sediment to get to the layer that we're looking for, we're going through water to get to the seafloor. So these areas are showing the different systems that we have going on here. And what was really cool about this experience is that we were looking for some ancient river systems that had been filled by the ocean, and that now fish populations were making their homes into these little ruts where the rivers once were. So this is me deploying one of the systems that sends out the ping. When you're sleeping in your berk at night, you can hear this ping going off, which is to some people really annoying, but to me really soothing to hear like this chirp and know that like as I'm sleeping, good science is being done. So another thing that we do is we send out this little machinery right here, and we take a sample just like a core, except for we're just doing it on the top layer, because unlike on the ground, we can't just look down and say the top layer has some roots and has some grass and has some leaves. As clear as the water is offshore, you can't see that far down. So we take it and we look at a microscope right on the boat, and we look at what we see here. So we see some shells, we see some rock, some sediment, some organisms, and a lot of really cool stuff. So deploying that is really, really fun. And the other thing we do is we send out a CTD cast, which is where we take, we test the salinity of the water, see how salty it is. We see how deep the water is, and we can do all of that, as well as test the temperature on this one machine that we send out over the edge. And we stop while we're doing those lines every like 10 lines and check where we are. So this is basically doing the equivalent of what we just did with hydrogeology, where we do all this information online and we test all these maps, and then we go out and take a core, and then we go out and use our GPS. We're doing all of that, but underwater, which is just an added layer of difficulty, but we have really cool technology that makes it a breeze. So most importantly, after we go through all of this stuff, is asking you guys, why does geology matter? So you guys might be wondering why we do all this stuff. Yeah, it'd be cool to live on a boat. Yeah, it'd be cool to eat macaroni every night. But it might not be something that you think counts for everyday life. So I'm curious to see, after all this stuff that we just talked about, why you guys think that geology matters. And I'm going to go through what you guys say, and then also tell you why I think geology matters and why I am excited every day that I learn something more about geology, and every day that I'm able to be a geologist. Awesome. Okay, someone says we need to take care of the earth. Another person says to study how our environment is changing and to protect it. Someone says making predictions about the future based on past events. These are awesome. Great answers, you guys. Yeah, this is all super true. You guys can keep sending those answers in, but so to me, something that matters is being able to, at the end of the day, I do all this hard work, and then I get to present all this information to people like you guys, to people with technology and funding to be able to make an impact with this information that we have. When I went on that 1 week, less than 1 week cruise, we were able to find an underwater habitat for this fish population that was being threatened by offshore drilling for oil. And because of that information that we found, we were able to send that to our government to say, you know, this is something that we should maybe not be doing to protect these fish. So it protects our environment. A lot of people said stuff like that. The research that I have done on my alluvial fan in just in South Carolina alone gives us a lot of information about where our sand and our coasts were formed. And because of that, we can make conscious choices about the environment that we're living in today to make sure that we make changes that will be positive for the environment of the future, because we know that these systems that we have end up depositing things that people are going to live on and dig wells in and have all these things that are going to affect how we daily live. If we are conscious enough, we can make a good impact. So that's why it matters to me. And lastly, I just want to talk about that a geologist can be anything. I think if you got anything out of this session today, the most important thing to me would be that you saw that there is not one way to be a scientist, right? And specifically a geologist. You can work in a lab, you can work on a boat, you can work with dinosaurs, you can work outside in a forest, in a field. There's a million different options that you can do. The underlying thing is that you care about the earth. And based on your guys' responses, it seems like a lot of you already are being really conscious or are really aware of what geology is and why it matters. So I hope that you guys are able to take from this that anyone can be a geologist. You just have to care about the earth. You can go outside and stick a straw in the ground. You can lick some dirt and you're a geologist. So, and with that, I'm just gonna open it up to questions for you guys. That is all I have to say. But I am happy to answer any questions you guys have. Awesome. Okay, so we got 2 questions. So, oh, even more coming in. Awesome. So we have a question of why did you choose College of Charleston? So the college that I go to, College of Charleston, is one that I chose before I knew I wanted to be a geologist. They have some really good options for a lot of different areas of study, and then I just had to take a general education science course. And in taking that, I fell in love with geology, which now that I am a geologist, and I've since been moving around because of COVID and being with family and all of those things that have happened to a lot of us being remotely, I realized that it's absolutely the best place for me to be, even if I didn't go there initially for that reason. Someone asked me if I have a favorite rock. Yes, I do. My favorite rock is feldspar. I'm wearing an earring that is feldspar. If you have ever seen granite that has pink in it, the pink in granite is feldspar. How did you get interested in geology? So I kind of already answered that. I just took a course that I was required to take to get a degree, and it was environmental science, and that was an introductory study to geology, and the rest is history. I am really passionate about it, and I realized that if I was already really interested in the environment and I could make that my life instead of just something I talk about, something I could devote myself to, and then other people that are interested or people that are not interested would find out why we should all be invested.
It looks like we had a question from the Q&A box asking, can you map a layer of the core to the time period in history? What was the most interesting thing that you've discovered?
Awesome. Okay. Can you map a layer of core to the time period in history? Yeah. So that is the reason why we were doing our course specifically. So I was sorry. I was looking at all the chats and everyone's asking really great questions. So the reason why we were doing that alluvial fan study is because we believe that the sands in coastal South Carolina are much older than we have accredited them to be. So that is the point of doing cores usually, is to check for organic matter. And when you find organic matter, you can test that with a radiocarbon date, which is when you send a little sample in a tube of your darkest section of your core to a lab, and they test the date of the last time there was carbon evident, which carbon is how we can tell the last life form that was there, I guess, essentially. It's kind of like testing the last little bit of something that was dead or something that had a lack of oxygen in their environment to see what was there. So yeah, what we found from our core is that it was older than the Pleistocene era, which is as old as everyone thought the cores in that area would be. So we found that it was much older than we thought it was, which is really exciting information. Yeah, hope that answered your question.
It looks like we also had a question of, do you think the work of geologists will become more important as time goes on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. I definitely think so. I think as we move into a time where things with climate change are really apparent, the work that geologists are doing is going to become increasingly more important as people like you guys are already growing up in a world where people are aware of the fact that we need to be cutting down our use of plastic, and we need to be more conscious about how we're using water, and we need to be aware of how we're treating our environment around us. And I think all of that, like I was saying earlier, it makes you a geologist. And if we are all being more conscious of that, the fact that there are people that are devoting their lives to this specifically is going to become more and more important as we're educating the masses of people that are starting to become passionate about something that wasn't as well known before.
Thanks, Erica. And kind of along those same lines, someone was wondering what you specifically want to do with geology for your career.
Awesome. Great question. These are all awesome questions, you guys. So I want to do science communication, something like this. I really love sharing with people about geology. I think that's something that is absolutely the most important thing I can do as a geologist. So I would ideally like to be able to do my own research and then share it with others. I think the interest that I have in a lot of areas of geology make it really important to continue to share. I think a lot of people that are practical field geologists focus on one very specific thing, which is awesome because we get the most thorough data from them. But I think as far as I'm concerned, I'm interested in the environment as a whole. And I think that the more I can expose myself to different areas of geology and different areas of research around the world, the more I would be able to share. And that is something that I believe is what I'm called to do, teach.
That is so cool, Erica, and you do it so well. We had a couple of questions, some quick questions. One was your dress made from a map? And I think that was from the slide of why is geology important?
Yeah. So my mom is the coolest, and she got me a dress that was an ancient map of my study area. So yeah, my dress for my research presentation when I concluded my research on alluvial fans was my subject area on a dress, which was so cool, and it's still my favorite dress to date. And yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of awesome things, someone else was wondering, did you see some cool stuff when you spent 5 days on the ocean?
Oh my goodness, yes. It was amazing. I did not realize how clear the water was offshore. I've only ever been to beaches, like probably most of you guys have, unless you've been on something like a cruise. And so I just had never seen how clear the water was to be able to see all the organisms. And because we're doing a lot of very loud and bright things in the middle of an otherwise dark and peaceful area of the world, with making a lot of noise with our technology and a lot of light at night when we're casting those CTD casts and getting ground truth samples and all that stuff, we would have a lot of organisms that would come up to kind of see what was going on. So I think my two favorite things were that the sonar technology ping attracted dolphins. So we would have dolphins that would swim up beside us and then play with the bow of our ship because they thought we were calling to them to play, which was so cool. And they loved it. They were having such a good time. And then the second thing that was really cool was at night, when we would do our CTD casts, squid would come up and kind of bump up against the CTD, and they're just so bright red compared to the all blue water and all of our blue technology. So that was really cool. And also just being out where all you can see, as far as you can see, is just stars and water. It's about as good as it gets.
That sounds amazing. That's really cool. We've got just a few minutes left. So if anyone has any more questions, we do have time for one or two more. So you can put those in the chat box or in the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you guys for asking so many great questions and for being here this morning.
So Erica, if any of them decide to go and do a core in their backyard with the activity that you provided, are there any resources for them to look at, like how to interpret their core, what different kind of soils, what different colors mean about different soils?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So if you just go online and look up core samples, you might be able to see a lot of pictures of people that just have like pointing little arrows at what they're looking at to kind of show you what you're looking at. I've done that a lot, even in my own personal research, just looked at what other people have done. There's a lot of resources out there. You can also just look up sediment profiles. That's something you could type in, and that'll show you the different types of sediment and what color they are. That might be a fun thing to do, to be able to see what kind of sediment you have in your region. So most of mine were very dark. If you live in a coastal environment, most of yours are going to be very orange and light brown. And those are things that tell you what the sediment profile is of that area. So that's something you could very easily look up. And then if you find little things like organisms or leaves, you can very easily just look around where you took your core to see where that might have come from. That's a really easy way that you can kind of truth what you're looking at, which is something we do in geology, even on this big scale.
That's awesome. Thanks, Erica, for the activity and the advice. We had a couple more questions come in. Someone was asking, how did the sky look from the ocean?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. The sky was beautiful. The last slide I had was a picture of a sunset. I hardly slept. I had really weird hours, like I said, where I had different shifts. So I was kind of messed up the whole time, but it was my own doing partially, because when I was supposed to be sleeping, I would be on the bow of the ship at the front and just looking out. So the sky was the clearest I've ever seen it in my entire life. And it was absolutely beautiful. We had a storm on our third day, and that was my favorite sky, honestly. It was so beautiful to see a storm rolling in its entirety, like surrounding you. It was pretty cool.
That's amazing. So I know that it sounds like you want to study or learn about a lot of different kinds of geology and do science communication, but we had a question from someone in the audience. At this point, what is your favorite geology?
Man, hardest question ever. I would say marine geology. I think getting to be off our feet and off, because we didn't have any in that area of offshore. We didn't have any cell phone reception, so it was really nice to just. It felt like it was like a cruise, like a vacation, but the whole thing that you're doing is working endless hours, and what you're doing is super important. So you feel really, really energized. So I think that's great. And even in the lab, even in the classroom, I really enjoy marine geology. I think those samples are things that you would not have readily available in your everyday life, whereas terrestrial geology and hydrogeology, you kind of have it around you at all times growing up in environments where you can see those things. So I think marine geology is the most interesting to me, because as a kid, I was really afraid of the water and really afraid of the ocean, and it turned into this massive love. So I think that's kind of cool that like I knew nothing about it, and now that I know a lot about it, I want to know everything about it.
Well, thank you so much, Erica, for answering all of these questions. I think we have time for maybe one more if anyone wants to add any last ones. And in the meantime, I think if we can share the last couple slides of the PowerPoint, we want to make sure that if you all had fun and enjoyed yourself, that you know how to stay connected with us throughout the rest of the winter and the rest of the year. So a big thank you to Erica for her presentation. And also a big thank you to our friends of the aquarium that have supported a lot of our work, including a lot of these virtual programs that we've been doing this year. And if you're interested in becoming a friend or learning more, you can visit that website there. There's also a number of other ways to stay connected with us. So on the next slide, you'll see our social media. If you're not already part of our e-newsletter list, if you go to this website on the bottom here, gacoast.uga.edu, and hit subscribe, you'll get the announcements whenever new events are coming out. The next ones that we have for youth are going to be in March. So March 20th is going to be our Youth Ocean Conservation Summit for ages 6th grade through 12th grade. So if that's something that any youth that are watching this are interested in, it's a great chance to connect with other people your age that are passionate about ocean conservation, and you'll get to develop an action plan and apply for many grants to do your action plan as well. For adults that are watching, our next program that will count for coastal stewards hours, so those are all workshops for adults about coastal stewardship. It's going to be February 11th, and it's going to be on diamondback terrapin conservation, and talking with Carolyn McInerney, who runs the diamondback terrapin hatchery here on Skidaway Island. And then because Erica talked so much about water and how what we do with our water now influences future environments, I also want to make a plug for our new coastal rain garden program that is launching this March. So we're going to have an initial workshop on March 13th, where you can learn about rain gardens, what they are, how you can use them. And that's a prerequisite to go to that if you would like to then go on to future workshops that include incentives for installing your own rain garden. And all of that information will be posted a little bit later this month, again, on that website underneath our events section. And lastly, we really want to hear from you about what you enjoyed from the program, any things to improve, ideas for future programs, and we take that all into account when planning for the future. And it helps us document our impacts as well. So at the end of this webinar, you'll see a survey pop up, and it takes about a minute or two to fill out, and we appreciate you doing that. And I'll also send an email as a follow-up with that link as well. So thank you all so much for spending part of your Saturday with us. Erica, any last words before we sign off?
No, just thank you guys for coming, and I appreciate you guys engaging with all the questions throughout and at the end. So thank you guys, and continue to be a good steward for your environment.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Erica. And my last little plug is that Erica was doing a public programs internship with us. So if you're interested in interning with Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant, our summer internship applications are going to be going live on our website soon too. So for anyone who's in that age category, you are welcome to look that up as well. And with that, we're going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thanks again for coming. See you later, alligators.